Hello, everybody. This is Mark Franco, and I wanted to talk to you about something that's I find very important. As someone who's been teaching English for a long time, I hear students bring that up quite a bit, and I think it's really important. I haven't done this in a while, this kind of setup, so you're going to have to bear with me. Okay, so there's my presentation. So, when not to read to improve your vocabulary. There are some questions that people bring up about it, and I have some opinions. Let's take a look. So, the idea came from Lily D, who sent me a message a while back, and she said, "Hey, good to see you again. I think with English being so weird, there is nothing better than reading a lot and widely and with a dictionary or dictionaries close at hand." So, yeah, I agree. Reading and reading widely is important. However, there's something here that kind of bothers me. I mean, not about you, Lily. Thank you so much for for the comment, because I hear this from English learners a lot, from my students. So let's take a quick look here. So the struggle is real. Vocabulary affects comprehension in reading, listening, speaking, writing. If you are reading something and you don't know a lot of words, it gets kind of difficult, right? When I ask my reading students what's the most difficult for them when they have to read in English, first answer is like vocabulary. If you're talking to someone, you're listening to them, and they're using a lot of words you don't know, communication gets a little difficult. So, what people will tell you is this: oh, to improve your vocabulary, you should read a lot. And there's a lot of truth in that, but there's a problem that we're going to talk about in a minute. So, this is the logic. This is how people are thinking. So, avid readers have good vocabulary. By the way, an avid reader is someone that reads all the time. Actually, I know quite a few people like that. They're avid readers. I can say I'm an avid reader too, but not all the time. So, avid readers have good vocabulary. Uh, Therefore, that's the logic, right? If you read a lot, you will have good vocabulary too. Is that good logic? Let's see. What's wrong with that? Yeah, we should encourage people to read and to read a lot and to read widely. The problem is this: avid readers read to understand the content. They see many words. "Oh, I cannot live with this. There's a mistake here and I can't stand it." They see many words, so they end up learning those words. But English learners are used to studying vocabulary. So when they read a lot, they end up studying vocabulary instead of reading. They are reading to learn vocabulary. They end up studying vocabulary because they're reading and they're looking words up in the dictionary. They're underlining the words, but that's not reading. Because remember, avid readers read to understand the content. Studying vocabulary when reading is a problem for, quite a few reasons. One reason is that if you're studying vocabulary instead of reading, there's no flow of information. You keep interrupting that flow of information from what you're reading to your brain. So studying vocabulary disrupts the reading flow. And because of that, it lowers your comprehension. If you just sit and you just read, focusing on understanding the content, you will be able to understand a lot, even if you don't know some words. But if you keep interrupting your reading to look up words that you don't know, your comprehension will sink. Also, studying vocabulary when reading slows down learning the content because you're not paying attention to the content. For example, if you're talking to someone, you're speaking in English to someone, and they say a word you don't understand, and you say, "Oh, wait, stop! What's that word? What did you say? What does that mean?" Well, the conversation is over, right? You're gonna keep interrupting the conversation. Probably not many people will want to talk to you because you're gonna be that guy that keeps interrupting all the time. Um, Studying vocabulary when reading puts focus on unimportant vocabulary. I've seen people that are so obsessed with vocabulary that when they read, if they see a word they don't understand, they freeze immediately, they get a dictionary, they have to know what that word means. Is that word really important? Do you need to know that word? Uh, can you continue reading and still understand what you're reading? Let's say you're reading a story and you have a few words that you don't understand. When you finish reading the story, you still understand what happened and you can retell the story. You can tell someone what you read. You understood the story because you were focusing on understanding the story, on the content. But if you're obsessed with vocabulary and you keep interrupting your reading to, get a dictionary, look the word up all the time, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand the story. And also, studying vocabulary when reading makes you dependent on dictionaries when you read. A lot of time, if you don't have a dictionary and you're reading something and you pay attention, you go, "Oh, I know what this means." And again, maybe you will not understand just by looking at the context, but you will still understand what you're reading. So don't go crazy with dictionaries. Okay, there's a time to read and there's a time to study vocabulary. So here's better advice for English language learners like you. When you read, focus on understanding the content. If you see a word that you don't know, try to guess the meaning of the words and just keep reading. Sometimes if you cannot understand the content, because a word is getting in the way, yes, you have to stop and look it up. But if you can continue reading and guess the meaning of some words, and some words you might not even understand what they mean, but you still understand the content, keep reading. Okay. Now, if you cannot understand the content, because remember, you're reading to understand the content. You're reading to understand the story. You're reading to learn something that the author, wrote that article for. Now, if you cannot understand that because there's a word that's getting in the way, then yes, you go, I have to stop and look up that word. I have to use a dictionary. Now, if a word is not important, keep reading. So after reading the content, go back and study the vocabulary. Now you're not reading anymore, you're studying vocabulary. So here's how I would summarize what I'm trying to say here. There's a time to read and there's a time to study vocabulary. If you're reading, focus on reading. Forget everything else. Just focus on reading. Focus on understanding the content. A writer wrote a story or wrote uh, a piece of news or a book chapter for you to read in science or technology or whatever. They didn't write that to teach you vocabulary. They wrote that to teach you the content, to teach you information, right? So get the information. Do your best to understand that information. And in today's world, it's extremely important for you to be able to read and understand instructions and different types of materials. And, being able to read and understand English is important. So there's a time for that. But, you're learning English, you want to enrich your vocabulary. Then there's a time for you to study vocabulary. And in fact, you can use the same text or the same passage, article, or book that you just read. And then you can go back over it and you've already underlined a few words here and there, and you can reread uh, certain passages, and then you can just go nuts, study vocabulary as much as you want. Um, that's it. I really appreciate your support. It's very important for me to have support from you. Otherwise, what am I doing here? You can support me by liking this video, leaving a comment, that helps a lot, and sharing the video with people that you think might be interested in this information. And if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe and hit the bell button. And also visit, let me switch to, oh no, I'm showing you this. Okay, so I told you I haven't done this in a while. You can also visit snaplanguage.io on the internet and go to ESL. Actually, let me show you really quickly here. This is my website, the Snap Language website. If you go here, have ESL lessons. I have a lot of information under basic. You can go, for example, to grammar, and you can go to different parts of grammar. And when you see this symbol here with a video, it means that there is a YouTube video attached to that lesson. Actually, this is my latest video here on irregular plurals. And you can see here the video, you can read the lesson. And for most lessons, you go to the bottom here, click practice. If you prefer, you can complete the exercise in a PDF file. You can print it and then make sure you read the instructions. In this TV show, 3 chefs compete to win $50,000, and you check the answer, and that's that. If you make a lot of mistakes, go back and review the lesson. I hope to be doing videos like these where I can just talk to you and just share my experience as a teacher. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye. Oh, and buy my mug.